Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I am Ryan McGuffey alongside my guy, Brian Anderson, 2005 White Sox World Series champion. This is the White Sox Recap Podcast. We've had a little hiatus and things have happened, BA, since the last time that you and I have gotten together. The White Sox have a new pitching coach, a new hitting coach. Luis Robert is back.
Your boy.
Sox Fest will return. Just your general, this is the time after the World Series ends when the news and the hot stove season get started. We're going to dive into the GM meetings, but just your take so far on Derek Showman, Zach Bove, the White Sox new pitching coach and hitting coach respectively, as the White Sox turn the corner and head into 2026.
Well, Getz said it was an exhaustive process choosing, Zach Bove for the pitching coach. I think he just went down to the first line of the resume and saw that it said Kansas City Royals. Bam, hired.
Wow. He does come with a nice resume, and now you see all of these guys, director of, a lot of analytical style things, and we want to dive into it as we start here in the podcast. We'll get more into the new coaching staff of the Chicago White Sox, but more so into what's being talked about at the GM meetings in Las Vegas. He's Brian Anderson. I'm Ryan McGuffey. This is the White Sox Recap Podcast, and it starts right now. All right, BA. So we heard press conferences or Zoom call press conferences last week from the announcements of both Derek Showman and Zach Bove. To me, it was a lot of like what you expect in those calls. We love this guy. The process was lengthy. It was a job that a lot of people wanted. Our young arms matched this guy's analytical background. Rather than dive in specifically, because a lot of people have, it's like, oh, this guy's background. To me, it never equals. I don't really care about the background. I want to see the results, and we can't spend a ton of time talking about what might happen with these new names. But the one thing I will say is, and we talked about this when they made the changes to move on from Marcus Timms, who, by the way, the Kansas City Royals hired as their hitting coach.
It's unreal, man. It's unreal.
And Ethan Katz, is that it's very clear that Will Venable has some autonomy here and oversight onto who is going to be with him side by side the rest of the way.
Well, I think it's really important to point out too, with like Zach Bove, Derek Showman, you look at these coaches, right? On the pitching side, you have to ask yourself, like, how can we get the most quality innings out of these younger players? How can we get creative with some of the veterans and maybe some of those guys that they need to go out and get on the cheap? And then innings management, right? Like, can you develop them, but also recognize when they're in a pinch and they probably need to back off a little bit? And then with Showman, I think you got to say, okay, we have a really young hitting core, exciting, but young hitting core group of guys. So I think they have to, for me, I think at some point in that meeting, it was something along the lines of, hey, you're going to get some peaks and valleys with these guys, but like the Colson Montgomerys, the Edgar Carrolls, you got to make sure that those valleys, those dips they're not permanent, right? You got to make sure that the roadway is very short, or the length of the runway.
Here's what I'll say about both. Like Bove, you look at the Royals last year, they struggled, but they struggled to score runs. They were at the top of Major League Baseball in starters ERA and pitching ERA. Like, I like that. I mean, we joke a lot about, oh, God, he's a Kansas City Royal. But the Royals did not have a problem last year pitching. And this guy was at the forefront and behind the scenes with the Royals. And then Showman, not a lot of people outside of Miami know that the Marlins were 79 and 83 with a very, very young core and nucleus. I like that he came from a team, to your point about here's your young core going forward. If the White Sox were to bring in veterans in 2026 and beyond, Showman's there to get these young guys, the Colson Montgomerys, the Kyle Teals, the Braden Montgomerys, who we're going to see soon. He's here to take those guys to the next step.
No, there's no doubt. I mean, the developmental piece is huge because the White Sox payroll clearly is like one of the lowest in the leagues, if not the lowest. So you got to be able to get creative and you got to be able to develop guys, and that's not unheard of. I mean, you look at some of the great White Sox teams. I mean, look at like a Joe Creedy, right? He's a perfect example. Not a very high draft pick, developed him out of Kansas City, took their time, went through there, like unbelievable defensive player, but man, just blossomed into like that perennial, just badass third baseman, 270 with 30 and 100 and just clobber doubles on the reg. So I look forward to like the White Sox and Showman developing those type of players. Like the Chase Mydross, in my opinion, are going to be the biggest the biggest piece for the White Sox, the matter of like, are they going to be successful or not? Because guys like him really set the tone. He's going to be able to, play short, play second, play third in a pinch. But he's got to be consistently at the top of that lineup, just getting on base.
I like the Creedy comp because a lot of people forget that Creedy was a 10, 12, 15, 18 homer guy and did develop into, he was never a 300 hitter, but he did get to 30 home runs. He did win a Silver Slugger. If we see that type, I think Colson Montgomery has kind of already shown that he's capable of doing that, or like he's capable of being a Silver Slugger type player. But can you get a Kyle Teal? Can you get that type of advance? Can Chase Mydroth become Dustin Pedroia-ish?
No way. Mark Ellis, man. I'm telling you, I know you love the comp too. I know you love the comp.
I know, but like Pedroia is probably a little unfair. The guy wanted to
MVP. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, I do expect more from Mydroth going forward. He can't just be a 650 OPS guy. I do expect the average to climb. I do expect a little bit more pop. But from what we've seen, it is. And I never thought Marcus Timms was here for the long haul anyway. I thought Ethan Katz might have more of a say in that. But Marcus Timms, just to me, didn't really fit the lineup and the organization and where they were.
I got one for you real quick, though. Here's a good comp because I was there. Man, I'll tell you what, Chase Mydroth, you want to look at what you should be as a second baseman, look at Gordon Beckham when he got called up in 09. I mean, it was a doubles machine. I mean, he was a machine, but my point is he was fearless. He ambushed fastballs. He drove the ball with runners in scoring position. He was a great second baseman. He was athletic, but he played with no fear. And I see a lot of that in Chase Mydroth. I just think the power numbers, you gotta be able to drive the ball in hitters counts.
All right, so the GM meetings are going on in Las Vegas as we record this. And these are always funny to me because there's so much noise that comes out of them. It's a media frenzy. They've become more, they used to be like a private 4 or 5 national beat guys would be there, and now it's everyone's there. And it's the calm before the storm. I mean, in theory, any free agent can sign right now. Free agency's open. But generally, this is the calm before the storm where GMs start to play chess with each other and line up deals to be made at the winter meetings in December. Sometimes it's like, well, hey, let's wait to see where Dylan Cease signs, and then maybe we can talk. If we don't get Dylan Cease, let's talk about Davis Martin and start the parameters of that type of a trade. There was some stuff that Chris was being ridiculed for the lack of commitment to multi-year deals. And I am under the belief that the White Sox can compete next year. And I say, I would say for that last wild card spot, if they make a couple of very smart, calculated deals that I believe do include a few multi-year deals. Your take. I'm not talking. No, they're not going to be in the 5, 6, 7 year.
No, the 2 for 20s. We talked about that, man. You get a 2 for 20 or 3 for 30.
Thank you.
Once upon a time in my era, 3 for 30 was the John Garland, right? You lock up John Garland for 3 years because he was lights out and probably your number 2 or 3 starter. But nowadays, man, let's just say Davis Martin, a caliber pitcher like him, is on the free agent market, right? You're like, hey, he wasn't great, but he ate up innings. He showed signs of promise. 2 year 20, 3 year 30, lock him up. And I think you go do that 2 or 3 times this year, 2 in the bullpen, 1 starter. I think you're in a lot better position. But I think in order for the White Sox to be successful, in order for guys like us, for the podcast to be fun and for fans to get excited, you have to believe that the White Sox are going to be the Cincinnati Reds of 2025. You just have to.
I do.
You do, yeah.
And I'm not drinking any Kool-Aid here. We're going to do a podcast next week. And the title is going to be how the White Sox can compete with a $100 million payroll. I just said that because of their division. And by spending some money on calculated players that smartly fit into what you have and what you have coming. Let's talk specifically about pitching for a second. We talked all year about how the White Sox, I didn't know if they had enough to get through 162 because they didn't have guys that had 100 career innings. Now they did, and they didn't do it with a lot of veterans. Adrian Hauser helped for half of the season. Martin Perez got injured for most of the season.
That killed him. I mean, that really hurt. To the White Sox credit.
You thought Jonathan Cannon was going to take another step. He took a huge step back, and I would argue that he might be more of a bullpen guy like seventh inning type. They need, to me, who are those guys going to be? Does Adrian Hauser come back to the White Sox? I'd make a case for that.
I mean, you pay the guy his money. I mean, even if it's a 4-year for some change.
He's not getting 4.
My point is, hey, when you're a bad team and you know that you're not going to make the playoffs, they could just do the exact same thing they did. No one's going to balk at like a $10 million a year contract. So,
my guy Gordon Whitmire.
Sorry for trying to hold your hand.
Anytime. We're here together. Yes, band of brothers. My guy Gordon Whitmire, who does the Cubs Recap podcast with Cap, down at the GM meetings, talked to Chris Getz. Getz specifically in the pitching market. Here's what he had to say about adding pitching to the 2026 White Sox.
It's definitely an area we're focusing on, adding pitching, in the spirit of protecting some of these young starters and, finding enough starts from arms that could help us navigate the season is something that, we're certainly paying attention to and want to, support, our young arms the best that we can, and in doing so, obviously there's free agency and trade activity, and we're taking a look at both of those avenues and see what we can accomplish.
How about that? It sounds like the message is getting out that they need to protect their young arms by adding veterans, whether it's trade or free agency. I'm always about money's just money, because you have to trade capital to get. I would only trade for if the White Sox were going to add via trade pitching, it would be a controllable arm, not just 1 year. I'd want at least 2 years on that deal.
Well, yeah, especially first off, thanks for dressing up, Getsy. Once upon a time at the meetings, they used to wear suits, but no big deal. Live your dream. But no, I mean, you look at some of these arms.
I can tell you who might not be on the White Sox Recap podcast if Getz is sitting here.
No, he's for sure. I'm going to be here next time. He knows what time it is. But no, I mean, absolutely. I think what that does is that not only sets you up for success, it gives them some stability in the rotation, in the bullpen, but also if you do have a Reds caliber type team in 2025, that gives you some longevity to be like, hey, these guys are here for a couple more years. It gets the fans to be something excited about, and you can go make a trade towards the deadline if you are only a piece or two away.
And we're going to hear from Getz on multi-year deals here in a second. But to that point, I actually do think the White Sox have to pay a tax right now. If they're trying to get that guy to say, hey, we don't want you just here for maybe the last year where it hurts before the fruits of the labor show up. We want you here for that year, and then you're here for the back end. Don't give me the bullshit about 2027. Don't be scared to sign guys, because it's easy. It's easy for teams like the White Sox, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Sacramento, wherever you're playing, A's, to say, well, there's so much uncertainty about I don't want to hear it, because what happens now? A year from now, you're going to see a real dry well in free agency, because it's going to be real and it's going to be right there and it's going to be very uncertain. But if you have an opportunity to get a guy right now on a 3-year deal, and don't tell me, I don't want to hear about, well, I don't know what year 3 looks like because we don't know about year 2. You're playing for 2026 still. There's a playoff. There's a World Series to be handed out in 2026. I'm not saying the White Sox are in that market to play for the World Series title, but the Minnesota Twins suck. They are free fall.
No shit.
They are now the new basement of they're the cellar dwellers of the AL Central, because they're in a rebuild. The Tigers, their window's still open. Skubal will stay there. The Guardians are always going to Guardian. I think the Royals are they're in a weird spot.
They're hit or miss, man. You never know how they are.
My point is, there is a lot of opportunity here for the White Sox to take another step. Am I saying they're going to the playoffs? No. Do I think that they can win 78 to 84 games by spending money wisely and still keeping it at $100 million? Yes. Chris Getz, when asked about his open-mindedness to add multi-year contracts to this roster moving forward.
We're open to multi-year contracts. It's obviously, it's got to make sense, with now we feel like we've built a pretty good foundation, and, we want to be able to provide, whether it be innings or bats, just playing time to, some of these young players and just getting acclimated with the big leagues. But with that being said, we've got opportunity, and, we want to be better next year, and so we're going to look at different ways of adding talent to this group. So if that means that for us to be competitive in the free agent market, going multiple years, like we'll consider that.
I need
real quick.
Okay.
That is a little bit more explained and open-minded than maybe last week when introducing some of the coaches saying, we're really kind of looking in this 1-year layout.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I was just thinking as a former player. I tried to get back into my former mindset of being on the field, right? I was very fortunate to play with a team that was very good every year. Even when we sucked, we were like 90 wins a year, right? And I know that's not the norm anymore, but for us, the standard was pretty high. Here's the tricky part, which Chris has to juggle and the other executives with the White Sox, is you have to be very careful how you project and how you project competitiveness and what the message you're sending to the young players, because the worst thing that could happen to the White Sox is the Mydras, Edgar Caro, Colson Montgomery, Kyle Teal are sitting there and they see the White Sox executives not doing shit, and they're going to be like, so we're just supposed to suck till 27? And I think that can put a bad taste in a young player's mouth, and you got to be very, very careful to make sure that you keep the team morale in the locker room at a very high level, because again, it was tough playing on teams that didn't make the playoffs when we were pretty damn good. I mean, we're in the 80 to 90 win range every year, even on a bad year. So I think you just have to make sure that you're letting your current team know that we are living in the present, because you can't just ask the White Sox fan if you're just like, well, we're not going to be good till 27. So do White Sox fans just mail it in and not show up next year? No, you need them to come and show support. So you got to make sure you're putting competitive chips on the field.
A quick time out here on the White Sox Recap Podcast to talk about our partners at Sinus and SnoringMD.com. Cap, this guy was a snorer, man. He'd be in the office, snoozing, catching a midday nap. And I'm like, come on, man. Then his wife, Mindy, was like, dude, I can't keep this going. You got to go see my friends at Sinus and Snoring MD. And now I have too. You know why? Fall allergies, they get the best of me. Ragweed, mold, dust. They trigger congestion. They trigger snoring, and Sinus and SnoringMD.com. They are the spot for you. With over 25 years of experience treating sinus, snoring, allergies, and sleep issues, they have in-office treatments. They speak English, Spanish, and Polish, and have locations in Oak Creek, Kenosha, Mount Prospect, Lombard, and monthly pop-ups in Elgin. They treat patients like family. Trust me, trust Cap. Go to SinusandSnoringMD.com. We recommend them. Their advanced treatments and procedures actually fix the problem, so you can breathe better, sleep better, and feel better. Don't wait for the cold weather, which is already here. Don't wait for it to hit even more. Start your season the right way. Visit SinusandSnoringMD.com today or call 847-886-0875. It'll be interesting. There are a couple guys on this. Like, you look at free agency, okay? Like, I don't know what Shota Imanaga is going to get on the free agent market. He just declined both options. And it sounds like I thought he would take the qualifying offer that the Cubs of 22-1.
He's going to get a buttload of money.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, but like, he'd be a guy that eats innings. I know he is who he is, but that's the kind of guy like I'm shopping for. I am really doing some serious medical work, and I want to get more into names next week on the podcast. Like a guy like Brandon Woodruff.
Oh,
Who needs a prove it type deal. And that guy who has got a chip on his shoulder and maybe a chip in it.
No shit. Hey, there's surgery for that.
Yeah. And he's had it, but like there are creative names out there to help develop who you have while winning games and eating innings on the fly that might not just be Aaron Savali and Adrian Hauser. That's my point. That you can creatively do a 2 for 27, 2 for 28.
3 for 39.
Jack Flaherty's out there.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's the type of guy where I'm like, I want his mound presence. I want him in the clubhouse.
Now
he's going to eat up innings.
He may say, look, my name and my resume say I'm going to try to win a championship, but maybe the market for that is 1 for 15. And a team like the White Sox goes, we'll give you 2 for 28.
Yeah,
and
I'm taking it.
You're going to be our guy.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. There are names out there. And I'm going to give you.
But go look at the Toronto Blue Jays and the the Los Angeles Dodgers and But go look at the depth they have. Go look at a disgruntled free agent, or maybe there's a how many players. I was that guy for a while. I was playing like shit, and so I thought it's not my fault that I'm playing like shit. So I tell my agent I got to get a fresh start. Go find the disgruntled player whose agent is actively shopping him at these winter meetings, unbeknownst to the GM, by the way. But that's a huge deal.
We heard Getz talk about trades. The White Sox just won the Southern League again. in Double-A. There are some names that I would say are not in the top tier. Look at the White Sox prospect list from like 10 through 20. There's some very intriguing names in there. They're very intriguing names. And you like listen to the guys at Future Sox. They do a great job really dissecting the White Sox minor leagues better than anybody locally here. There are some intriguing names in there that I think you could package for a smart trade where it doesn't hurt. And maybe there's a name that surprises us that's in a trade that we don't know about. Maybe it is Edgar Caro. And I know you don't want to trade him. And
Devastate me.
I don't either. But
if it makes sense, you got to do it. You got depth at the position. Sure.
Better. Then you're looking more like the possibility of being one of these young up-and-coming teams, a la the Cincinnati Reds, who last year hired Terry Francona not to tread water. Terry Francona came back.
He's too old. He came back. He's like, I'm not coming back here to like spin wheels.
Like Bochy did with the Rangers. He came back to do what? Win a World Series, and he did. So, Chris Getz, are the White Sox, can they be more competitive? And when I say competitive, I'm talking truly fighting for a wild card spot.
You better believe that when Getzey comes here, I'll make sure that we'll get him in the offseason, preferably probably after the new year. But my first question to him is going to be like, do you make trades or sign anyone not with the Kansas City Royals? Start there.
Well, let's see what Getz had to say about being a competitive team in 2026.
I do think that we're going to be more competitive than we have been the last 2 years. We were able to make a significant jump from 2024, and obviously that wasn't too difficult considering where our win total was. But if you look at some of the production that we've gotten from some of these players that have just gotten to the big leagues, Colson Montgomery and Kyle Teal and Edgar Caro and Vargas taking a step forward and Shane Smith. Their continued development is vital for us to add wins. And in addition to that, finding some free agents or other players from other organizations to help is a way to boost that win total. We look at our internal projections and public projections, and I think we're in a spot that we should be able to anticipate much more competitive club just based on what we currently have. Now, with that being said, those are just projections.
They are just projections, but I don't think you bring up internal projections unless you think they're worth talking about. To me, I don't know knowing what the White Sox have right now. Okay, they've added nobody. What would you say an internal projection looks like for you from a record standpoint?
I mean, I have to, Will Venable was the right guy. That checks a box. You have to assume that each player is going to, even if it's marginally going to get a little bit better. You have to assume that Colson Montgomery is going to, have some consistency. He's going to struggle, but should those guys just project and get a little bit better, the White Sox have got to be at the 70 win mark.
Okay, I was going to say 68.
Yeah.
So that's an 8 to 10 game improvement that we're giving them right now, based off of current roster and guys like Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz and Braden Montgomery knocking on the door. When I say knocking on the door, some of those guys might be knocking on the door a little bit sooner than we think. Sure.
I mean, you look at Hagen Smith and you watch how he's dominating Double-A, how he's like when he's on, he's striking out over 2 guys an inning. You don't hold guys like that back. Now, Getzey and those guys got to make sure they figure out, okay, is he able to handle the workload? Do we monitor his innings in spring and keep him fresh and really monitor him during the season? But I have to imagine, in fact, I'm willing to put my name on it. Like if he's healthy and he's throwing well, he's breaking camp.
You think he's breaking camp?
No doubt. I mean, you
think
can't,
he skips Triple-A?
There's no reason to go there. So he's gonna, guys like them don't get worse, right? I think as long as his workload's fine, he feels fine. Why would you not have him come be your third or fourth starter or be a closer or something? Like the guy's so exciting. It gives something to fans. He's the Garrett Crochet of the bunch, right? He's that guy that's going to come up and do something exciting where the fans at least once every 5 days are like, I'm going to come fucking watch that guy pitch.
Smith is 2.57 ERA in 5 starts in the Arizona Fall League in 14 innings, 21 strikeouts in 14 innings. That's impressive. I like the fact that he did go down in the Fall League.
Sure, that's great.
He missed a lot of time during the season, but did make 20 starts at Double-A Birmingham with a 3.69 ERA. He had 108 punch outs and 75 2/3.
That's nuts.
what does like 108 and 75 and 2/3? Like how good? Give me how good
that
is.
It's unreal. And let me tell you, as far as projections wise, like there's been a generational component that's shifted a bit. Cause like I know in my day, that wouldn't translate into as many strikeouts probably in the big leagues. Like, even Felix Hernandez going through the minors was like 12 strikeouts a game. Like that obviously probably more towards the 7-8 range to 10, right? When he was in his prime. But nowadays, though, they don't care about striking out. So that's going to translate to similar or more strikeouts in the big leagues. They're going to ambush, better pitches out over the plate. But if he gets to 2 strikes, 0-2, 1-2, he's going to get a lot of free. It's nasty. And what my favorite part about it is, what it's intended to end up back foot to the righties, right? Or down and into a righty. Sometimes it backs up and it still has the same depth, but it just falls off the table a little bit and he still gets a great result from it.
Interesting. I can buy the argument Hagen Smith could skip AAA and just be in the major leagues. Now, the way the only thing I could push back on, I don't have the schedule in front of me, but the schedule a lot of times in April, as you know, has extra off days where you don't need a 5-man rotation for probably the first 2 to 3, 4 weeks. And that might create an argument where Hagen Smith is every 5th day in Charlotte for 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's fine too. Or how about, hey man, we're going to put you in plus minus situations. We're no matter what, we're going to warm you up. Like we warm you up in the 6th or 7th inning, if we're winning, you're coming in.
I just don't like if he's a starter, let's make him a starter.
There's no doubt, but I mean at the same time, like I've always been a big fan of like, hey, if the guy can pitch and help you win games. And if you are the Cincinnati Reds, I'm not going to go, well, he's a starter. We can't use us.
I would compare him to like more of like a Cade Horton than for the Cubs.
Sure.
He manages innings along the way. And then you look at what Cade Horton did in the second half. Thank God they had him because the Cubs literally rode his back to the playoffs.
Doubt.
And the way he picked up that staff, that could be, Cade Horton's a dude. That could be a similar comp. Now, the White Sox aren't winning 92 games in 2026, but he could have that type of impact in a second half for a team that all of a sudden, and this is what I'm talking about. You get to the All-Star game. Okay. You look up, the Sox are 3.5 out of the wild card.
Dude, hit the gas.
That puts you in a pretty damn interesting situation because you're not a team that's, should we rebuild or not? No, you're a team that's on the come and going, you know what? Let's build around this by not mortgaging the players that we have. Maybe you make a smart trade from the minor leagues, and then you add and ride the arm of like a.
If the White Sox are 3 games out of the All-Star break from the wild card spot, I will personally go down to Jerry and be like, I need a check. I need a check for 20. We need to button this thing up.
Okay, we are putting this down as November 13th at the 27-minute mark. Brian Anderson goes to Jerry Reinsdorf to ask.
I'll probably have to call Michael first, but I'll still get there.
To ask for money at the trade deadline. That would be the ultimate dream scenario for the White Sox. But first, they need to add before they do anything else. And we're going to get into that on the next edition of the podcast. We are going to build a $100 million payroll and tell you, and with that team say, assuming everyone develops and takes another step, and somebody's going to take a step back. We know that. There'll be some surprises along the way. Braden Montgomery's coming. I think Braden Montgomery's at the All-Star break. I do.
Hey, well, here's what I got for you. If the White Sox, they lacked outfield depth, premier outfield depth, right?
Benintendi, literally since you were drafted.
So if you look at Benintendi, and for any reason, I mean, he's banged up, hamstring, ankle, shoulders bothering him, and Braden Montgomery has a great spring. He's breaking camp with the team.
I don't. Okay.
No, but I mean, no. Listen, he has to be healthy too. He's had an injury history as well.
The podcast is still like 5 months away.
We're not going to go back and forth. Give and take.
Can I breathe? I know you're sitting good on your crown since you won this year's prediction.
Hear ye.
You won this year's prediction podcast. Guess how much time we spent about Luis Roberts' option being picked up?
Thank God. Can we not talk about it? He just ruined it. We were
soured this entire podcast.
Look at the growth. Look at the growth. Look at the positivity we had.
I know, and that's why I would have. And then people are like, well, who's going to play center field? I would have not spent $20 million, or I certainly would have made a trade where I took on dead money. I'm just, I don't want to hear like, well, what if he gets hot? You trade him at the deadline.
Cap siding, but that is the equivalent right now of me going to David Kaplan at the end of the year and being like, listen, Cap, I know that I could improve. I could do a lot better at this podcast, but I'm going to need you to just go and give me $20 million and try my best next year. He'd be like, get the fuck out of here.
And he's like, by the way, I don't know if I'll show up every week.
Right?
Because
no, my hamstring.
I can't wait till you're on CHSN.
It's a far drive.
I can't wait till you're on CHSN next year and you guys are talking about Luis Roberts' last 14 games and everyone's getting excited about
God.
He's hitting 330 with 7 home runs. Only to follow. Look at this guy. Yeah, you got your own problems. Speaking of spending money,
it's the off season.
Speaking of spending money or lack thereof, the Cubs have their own issues. BA, it was fun, dude.
Nice.
Good to have you back in the house.
I'm just glad Captain knocked the mic over to start over again.
I'm just glad. Well, let's start if he has the mic on.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, we have to put the beginning of as a blooper.
We'll put that out as a
blooper.
Put that out as a tease.
That's
For
great.
the latest edition of the podcast. This has been the White Sox Recap Podcast. He's Brian Anderson. I'm Ryan McGuffey. If you don't already subscribe to the recap, what are you doing? Join the movement. Subscribe. Hit the notification bell every time that we have a new podcast. Boom, you're notified, and you can download, subscribe, listen. We're also on audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. Looking forward to putting the $100 million payroll together and bringing that to you next week. He's BA. I'm Guff. We'll see you next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast.